Welcome to The Explainer. It's amazing how a few small compromises, things that seem totally practical at the time, can end up leading to catastrophic failure. Today, we're going to unpack an ancient story of what happens after a great leader is gone, and it's a powerful cautionary tale about the real danger of settling for good enough. So let's think about this for a second. What happens after a visionary leader is gone? Look at Apple after Steve Jobs. They somehow managed to continue the mission and keep thriving. But ancient Israel, after their leader Joshua passed away, well, they took a very, very different path. And both of these stories really hinge on the answer to one single critical question. And this is the core challenge, isn't it? When that guiding vision, that driving force is gone, is the next generation going to pick up the torch and carry it forward, or are they going to let it fizzle out? The answer to that question will define everything, whether we're talking about a tech company or an entire nation. Now, at the end of the book of Joshua, Israel was in an incredible position. They had a crystal clear mission from God. They had the land that was promised to them, and they were all set to finish the work Joshua had started. They were absolutely poised for greatness. But what happens next? Honestly, it's like watching a train wreck in slow motion. The story kicks off with this huge burst of success. It really looks like they're just going to wrap this whole thing up, quickly and decisively. But as we're about to see, that path of least resistance, well, it proves to be incredibly tempting. What's really interesting here is just how clear the command is. After Joshua dies, the Israelites ask God, okay, who goes first? Who's going to lead the charge? And the answer could not be more direct: Judah. They get a divine green light, a promise of total victory. And at first, they act on it with everything they've got. And man, were they on an absolute roll. The tribe of Judah, with their allies, the Simeonites, they just start attacking and winning. They're capturing key cities, taking down powerful rulers, and securing huge chunks of territory. It really feels like they have this unstoppable momentum on their side. Right when total victory seems like it's just around the corner, something changes. The entire strategy just shifts. Instead of finishing the mission, driving out all the inhabitants like they were commanded, they start making exceptions. And just like that, all that momentum is lost. And this is where the problem becomes so clear. See, it wasn't just one misstep or one little slip-up. A really widespread pattern of compromise starts to emerge. You see it tribe after tribe. Benjamin and Jerusalem, Manasseh, Ephraim, Asher, they all fail to complete their mission, leaving these pockets of Canaanite influence all over the land. So this is the crucial point, right? This wasn't just a military failure. It was a conscious choice. When Israel finally got strong enough, instead of driving the Canaanites out completely, they put them to forced labor. They chose the immediate, easy benefit of cohabitation over the much harder path of complete obedience. All right, let's move to the dramatic turning point, because this choice is about to come back to haunt them. The consequences of settling for good enough are about to be spelled out in the clearest, most sobering way you can imagine. Suddenly, the angel of the Lord appears, and this is not a gentle suggestion, it is a direct confrontation. He reminds them of the covenant they made with God, that they wouldn't make treaties with the people of the land, that they tear down their altars. And then he asks this absolutely piercing question: why have you done this? And here it is, the consequence. God declares that he will no longer help them drive these nations out. The very people they chose to live among would now become the very source of their downfall. Their neighbors would become traps, and their foreign gods would become snares, constantly pulling Israel away from their own God. This divine warning wasn't just predicting a one-time problem. It was laying out the blueprint for a devastating, repeating cycle that would define the nation for generations to come. One generation's simple compromise became the next generation's curse. So here's how it worked. A new generation would grow up, one that didn't know the Lord or what he had done. And surrounded by all these local cultures, they'd fall into idolatry, worshiping gods like Baal and the Ashtoreths. And that's what kicked off the cycle. First, compromise leads to oppression from their enemies. Then, in their misery, they cry out to God for help. God raises up a judge, a deliverer, to save them. And then there's peace, for a little while. But here's the kicker. As soon as that judge died, the cycle started all over again. And with each turn of the wheel, they sank deeper and deeper. The text says they returned to ways even more corrupt than their ancestors, refusing to give up the stubborn, evil practices that were introduced by that first fateful compromise. So why does this ancient story matter to us today? because it is such a powerful lesson on the legacy of our choices. It shows how decisions that seem so practical or easy in the short term can have absolutely catastrophic consequences down the line. That choice to just peacefully cohabitate and use the Canaanites for forced labor, it probably seemed pragmatic. It was the easy path. But that one single act of partial obedience directly led to intermarriage, to idolatry, to corruption, and to centuries of suffering and depression. It really was a slow-motion train wreck. And that leaves us with a really critical question, not just for them, but for us, in our own lives, in our companies, in our communities. This story is a stark reminder that good enough can be a trap, setting in motion a cycle of failure that we might not even see until it's far too late. It forces us to ask, where does the easy path become the most costly one of all?